what we need more like more textures and layers of the feminine because
Mm,
ask any husband, okay, or a
mm,
man who is it like in love with a woman. It's not because she is just silent and
yes.
dutiful and submissive. She's devoted,
Mm,
right? She can be devoted, she can be loving, she can be caring, but at the same time, you are so in like, and this is the only thing men need from women is to be seen as a man,
mm,
right? So when she can bring that devotion but not be stifled in her expression,
mm,
that is, a relationship where the masculine and feminine energy, ooh,
mm.
right, is circulated and
Yeah.
creates life,
Yeah.
not this hierarchical top down, I'm the male authority and you're the
Mm,
silent submissive
mm.
situation that we see. I mean, it's disturbing. We see it happen being preached in certain circles and
Yeah.
certain tropes, right?
Yeah.
And the truth is, a woman is a man and a woman is so much more interesting than that.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome back to A Woman Refined podcast. I am your host, Lauren Renee, as always, and this is episode 8. This month on the podcast, we have my friend Martine Luna, who is Feminine Womanhood online on Instagram. You may know her. She posts some incredible content and is one of the few women that I know that brings the nuance that we really need in this space to the conversation. She has some incredible information to share. And this month, we go delving into the two polarities in this world of the purity culture and the feminist movement and how that all plays out online. I think we have a pretty awesome discussion, and I hope that you enjoy it. If you do, I would love for you to do all the little online things like click, follow, share, all of that fun stuff. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 8. So, Martine, welcome. Welcome to Woman Refined podcast. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you, Lauren. It's such a pleasure.
We have been chatting for so long. And just before we jumped on the call, you and I were just chatting about all the different ideas we've had to chat about so many things over the
We've
years.
chatted about so much that we can't even remember. And we're like, what were we going to talk about in this podcast today? I can't. Let's just see where it takes us, which is usually what
Exactly.
happens to us. Yeah.
It's so perfect. And you know what? It's so perfectly woman, isn't it? Where you're like, I don't know, we'll figure it out along the way. We'll
Right,
just
right.
birth something creative and it'll be magnificent.
Exactly, exactly.
I think you and I were just discussing before how one of the first things that we always aligned on when I first discovered you, and I can't actually remember how I discovered you or if you discovered me, but I think it might have been through
Ah,
Hasty,
it was for me, it was through Ryan King.
through Ryan.
Ryan
Right.
was talking about you and like Ryan, I think in the beginning when he was just publishing things and he
Yeah.
was finding both men and women that he could relate to and that, had the same kind of like mindset in
Yeah.
relationships. So you were one of those, I was one of those,
Mm,
and he would recommend our pages together. We'd be
that's right.
seen on his recommendation. So I just followed everybody
Yeah.
that was on his recommendations. That's how I clearly remember encountering you and started
Yes.
following you because of him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ryan, I mean, I feel like the first people that I found were like Ryan and Jag. And I
And
felt like
Jag, yeah.
it was like a lifeline because I felt very alone out here. I was posting things that were very against like
Edgy.
the one side of like the trad right wing conservatives, like this
Oh my
really
gosh.
aesthetically pleasing kind of group that were the backlash against the leftist feminism. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like there's some more nuance, but no one really wants to talk about that. And
Yeah.
I felt like I was just alone out there, just saying stuff to
Mm.
nobody. And when I found Ryan and Jag who were saying similar things, I was like, thank you. Oh my God, it's like a lifeline.
Yeah.
And you need that
Yeah.
the male leadership as well. I was looking for them to kind of step into the forefront, and then they did that.
Yeah.
And then as true leaders, they just totally rallied everyone, and they found you and other people and posting everyone. And suddenly we have a whole community of people who are actually willing to have like really,
Conversations.
exactly, really
Yeah.
nuanced, like delicate conversations that are
Mm.
actually profound and not polarized in the sense of like
Yes.
black and white.
Exactly. And we need room for that because, we already, like you said, this whole trad wife phenomenon,
Yeah.
right? I was chatting with another, fellow wife
Mm,
earlier, and she made a point that you, a lot of what we see is, this is how it's meant to be. This is how stark and opposite we're meant to be.
mm,
Really comes a lot of it. If you look at their background, it comes from people who are making the pendulum swing from,
yeah.
like, let's say, extreme feminism,
Yeah.
right? And as females, we really autocorrect when
Mm,
we want to gain approval.
mm,
That's our nature, right? So we can talk about like how we've evolved as females to belong. And we'll do that with
mm,
women, we'll do that with men, of
mm-hmm,
course. And it's easy to find yourself in a movement of
mm,
women who are course correcting what they have believed to be, a mistake,
mm,
or, that was wrong of me, or I feel shame around that.
mm.
And it's when I found women who could hold, because both things can be true at the same time. You can
Yes.
be a single mom and not hate men, right? But
Yes.
like, just because you are a single mom doesn't mean that you aren't, this, like the traditional lifestyle is not available for you.
Yeah.
So there was a missing channel of conversation for
Yeah.
this nuance, right?
Mm,
And I have a lot of clients who are single moms, and a lot of them are feeling the same way. It's like, so is it hopeless for me because I'm a single mom and I'm,
yeah.
seen by these women as, anti-family, or that's what feminism got you? And I'm like, there's so many stories that we don't care to hear of
Mm,
women who aren't anti-men. They are not like raging right-wing trad conservative women, but they do see, there's a harmony and there's a polarity that naturally exists in nature for us. And we have to like peel back the other layers that we have become dogmatic around, for the sake of correctness, for the sake of assuaging some shame or guilt that we felt for our past life,
mm,
and find a way to talk about these things level-headedly, hearing the other person out completely without,
mm.
starting a debate, and just seeing how multifaceted the femininity space
Yes.
is, right? It's not just
Mm,
about sourdough and sundresses and walking barefoot and getting
yeah.
pregnant all the time, right? It's so much more beautiful than just that.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree. I think one of the things that, because I was that. I was that feminist because I didn't know anything else existed.
Yeah.
I was not exposed to anything else. And it was a female friend of mine who first said, probably about six or no, 7 years ago now, said to me, feminine, not feminist. And I was like, what does that mean? I don't understand what that
Mm.
means. Because I'd always wanted these things, but I didn't know that it was okay to want them. And I didn't know
Yeah.
that I would be able to find a partner who would want those things. I was kind of taught that men don't want that's a
Right.
burden.
Hmm.
So or that if you want to be provided for in any kind of way, that you're a gold digger, so like
Right.
don't ever want that. So it was like all this programming that I then had to look at and start to undo. And I'm fortunate in some ways because I had done so much work on myself up until that point, so I knew how to dig into that process. I knew
Hmm.
how to go deep, and I knew what it was like to swing hard one way and hard the other. So I knew I didn't want to do that. So I was
Mm.
able to start to look at um, the individual. And that's what I really loved
Yeah.
about your work, is that, like, because I didn't have really a name for it. I was like, it's so individual. It's the individual feminine, but it just didn't have
I
this
love
ring.
that.
And you were
Hmm.
saying it's the biological feminine. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. That's what I mean, because everybody's
Yeah.
biology is the same, yet completely different. and everybody's
Right.
journey.
Everybody's biology is the same. Like we are all female, but our
Yes.
psyches make us who we are.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Nobody's journey is the same. Nobody's DNA is
No.
exactly the same, yet we are all women. So, and I just loved that your take on a whole bunch of things that we just started resonating with each other, like riffing off each other, like,
Yeah,
yes, yes,
we riff off that.
yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, even with, I think a lot of women know me for, okay, femininity. And then she mentions, something like biological, evolutionary
Mm,
realities, and then some G&M sprinkled here, but I don't even slap a label of those things on
mm,
myself because, I'm not looking to be like identified by one thing. Even
yeah.
my spiritual lineage, like a lot of people ask me, are you a Christian? And I'm like, yeah, but if I tell you exactly what kind, you'd probably not be friends with me.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just funny. And
Yes.
the thing is, I find people who share that,
Yes.
and it's totally like, people like you, we believe in God, we believe in
Mm,
like like the perfection of like nature, even if,
mm,
we can't fully understand it or explain it, or and I find that it's so much more blissful,
mm.
not ignorant, okay? Not ignorance is bliss, but more like light and conflict free, if we're going to use
Mm.
that language, to live life with this curiosity rather than the rigidity of let's find more ways to make it more correct than what somebody else is
Yeah.
doing, right?
Yeah.
Because that is so contracting and so constricting that sometimes if you're living that way as a woman, you're unaware of the unnecessary stress and then cortisol, like we can talk about the hormonal things, right? That
Mm.
is causing your body to live inside of as an experience. And I'm
Yeah.
like, um, I just want to find more ways to laugh about things and
Yeah.
take things lightly, because not lightly in that I am ignorant and I have no responsibility, not that, but lightly in that I can let things go.
Mm.
I can go into a state of like looking at things from neutrality, right?
Mm.
And recognize that people are all on their own journey. And I fully choose where I am right now. Maybe that'll change tomorrow. I don't know. But the point is to not be in this rigidity
Yeah.
of what it has to be, what femininity has to look like, sound like, be like. And yeah, to not put myself on any type of pedestal for any
Yeah.
woman to aspire to either,
Yeah.
right? And I love what you said, individual
Yeah.
femininity, because that's actually what it is. Even if we as women naturally want to gravitate in community with one another,
Mm.
we are still individuals, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Without it being, she's an independent woman, that
Yes.
falling into that trope either.
And I love that you brought up your spiritual stuff as well, because that's what I was going to actually say was that I love that you have actually gone and you went through this journey of like breaking down your faith and rebuilding it again.
Oh,
You
yeah.
actually look at like so many people just go into something without actually deeply looking at why do I believe this or what is
Right.
this truly about? They get like the
Mm,
headline and think that they have an idea of what that headline means and then they
yeah.
live that out without actually going through like the nuts and bolts of what that might look like expressing through their own personal filter in their daily life. And that's
True. Yeah.
so frustrating for me to see online, when we're told that women who oh gosh, there's so many lines that you hear on both sides. Women who stay at home are a certain
Yeah.
kind of woman. A woman who works is a certain
Mhm.
kind of woman. A woman who
Who
earns money
says?
isn't
Yeah.
submitting to her husband. Like all of these
Right.
ideas that people
Mm,
have, and they all base them off other people's ideas without actually
yes.
turning inward and saying,
Mm,
where does that align with me? How does that light me
mm,
up? Where is that sitting within like the truth of, and this is what I love about your work, is the truth of reality. And this is what I'm all
yeah.
about as well. And this is where we come to the biological, because you cannot deny that. This
You
is
can't.
the
You
reality is we
can't.
are childbearing beings and men are not. And
Yeah.
if you just
And
go to that basic biology, you can't argue
exactly.
with that.
You can't. And this is why even, so I do profess that I follow a certain spiritual lineage,
Mm,
Christianity is just, might look different than the conventional
yes.
definition of that. But even in like when I invite women to look at biology, I even put it this way to them. Like, let's test your faith in God, shall we?
Mm.
Can you put that on the shelf for this hour just to look at your biology? Because a lot of women, they try to make biology belong to like the Bible or to this practice
Yeah.
or to this religion. And I'm like, no, 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 no. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
We belong to biology. We
Mm.
belong to nature. And then once we can reconcile that fundamentally we are, then we can bring in the belief systems that support that because we have every right
Yes.
to choose what we want to believe, right? And
Mhm.
so that's really hard for some women. But you know what? In the spaces that I hold, the women have learned, like you said, to ask that fundamental question: what does this mean for me?
Mm.
How is this like not even just resonating, but if I bring it down to the unchangeable biological facts about me as a woman, what here is true,
Yes.
right? Because nature will always confirm what is true,
Hmm.
right? And so a lot of women, I find I find they are finding that to be helpful about my space. It's like because we can have these, we have these Zoom calls and these
Mm.
coaching calls and whatnot. And when you are allowed to like shelf something like your doctrine
Mm.
or your ideas, people don't like to say that they have dogma and ideology, but we
Mm.
do, right?
We all do.
So we all do, right? Because we have the capability for that. We have the mind, right? So when we are able to shelf that and really look at things, like the ontological truth
Mm.
of what is, right? Then I find that that strengthens one's relationship with God,
Yeah.
one's relationship with self, because then there is no more, like I call it the internal war,
Mm.
right? Because when you have an internal war, it's like I'm scared to
Yeah.
question my
Yeah.
beliefs. I feel scared to put this belief in, like what I have been taught on the shelf
Mm.
because we're not allowed to do that,
Yeah.
like, oh, you don't do that. You don't deconstruct, you don't parse the faith, you don't question the
Yeah.
Bible. I've done all of that,
Yeah.
right? And
Well,
I
it's
still read my Bible. Yeah,
the
I
ultimate
still,
lack mentality, isn't it? Because
it
like if
is.
if I was to do something wrong, I'm going to be dropped. I'm going to be abandoned. The Father
Yeah.
will not take care of me. I will not be
Mm,
loved. I will not be provided for anymore if I am anything other than perfect. And it's
right.
so against actually what you are being taught in religious circles, but yet it is the conditioning that you are receiving. And so to
Yeah.
be able to, let go of the lack and just be like, what if I am a mess? What if I let go of everything and
Yeah.
I am still held?
Yes, that's a wonderful way to put it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like a felt sense, it's like a somatic sense
Yeah.
of, well, what does it really mean to fully trust the masculine in this
Yes.
sense,
Yeah.
right? What does that mean like on a fundamental level? And like you said, it's that sensation. It's that
Yeah.
felt sense of I can ask anything. I have a daughter. She can ask her father anything.
Yeah.
And he will not like look at her any less. And
Mm.
literally like that's the best teacher for me, a father who actually cares for like
Mm.
his daughter, his child is the same, in my view, like the same experience I have when I'm questioning what I've believed, religions I've participated in,
Yeah.
sacred texts that I've read and I still read up to today, belief systems around masculinity and
Yeah.
femininity. Like, how am like I want to be in such trust and devotion to God because I do anchor my life on God
Mm.
that I can ask anything
Mm.
and it would be okay,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I think arriving, like you said, at that place of feeling held, no matter what, is
It's
such a journey that we take, right?
yeah.
It's a big journey we take as women. Yeah.
It's also like the parts of us that are rejecting ourselves that we then call in
Mm.
this rejection. So it's like,
Oh,
I'm rejecting this part of me that wants to question. I'm
oh,
rejecting her and saying that's not okay. And so therefore,
right.
I'm projecting that out and saying, if I question anything, then I'm going to be rejected. but
Oh, that's
actually
so
it's
good.
the
Yeah.
rejection of self. It's the rejection of where you're yearning to go, where you're learning to like expand and grow into and feel into your actual reality, your world. Like,
Yeah.
how is your existence existing? And it sounds
Yes,
so like
exactly.
esoteric, but it is the female experience because we are so embodied in that way and so
Yeah.
intuitive. And we can't logic
Yeah.
our way out of this. It has to
No.
be inward in order to go outward. And that just cannot be communicated via some Instagram post or some
No.
group or wearing a white sundress on a farm and making
Mil
butter from
milking a
scratch.
milking a cow,
Yeah.
right? Milking a cow. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like I mean, we make fun of it and everything, but the thing is, we everybody has the right to live life on their own terms. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna say, like, even if in in a biological perspective, we know there's something there that isn't, correct or right.
Mm,
Like, and I don't know if we're going to talk about the identity politics. I prefer not to, but just to cite that example,
mhm.
it's like we know intuitively when something is anti
Yeah.
biology, anti natural laws, right?
Mm,
We know it. And I think what I'm in the devotion of and in the practice of is letting that be okay, not okay for me because I've
mm,
chosen my
yeah.
biological womanhood, like I've
Mm,
chosen it, right? But to
mm,
let people not come to their own awareness
yeah.
of what is ontologically true that
Yes.
cannot change, right? And well, in my work, that's why I love like the lens of like Germanic New Medicine, although it's not my main focus. I do
Mm,
I do apply that lens a lot because it has given me so much room for a compassion for humanity,
mm,
right? Like these people who are confused about their identity, confused about their biology, it is still nature taking care of them so that
mm,
they will be able to survive basically because that's nature's law. It's
yeah.
like survival of the fittest, right?
Mm,
Survival above all else, right?
mm,
And so it's also helped me to look at compassion in like the femininity space as well, the masculinity
mm,
space. It's like, okay, there might be this really red pill guy that's spouting and spewing a lot of hate for women, but
yeah.
you know what? I know that that's a territorial loss conflict,
Yeah.
right? He lost his territory somehow. That's how he perceived it.
Mm,
And the woman was the attacker in his experience. And so it's easier to make a podcast, that's
yeah.
all about women are manipulative and women are this and let's hate on the women. They're only
Mm,
useful for sex and these benefits. So I can understand where that's coming from. And it's
mm,
actually helped me to not be affected by the things I used to be affected by. You know what
mm,
I mean?
mm,
Yeah. So I think that's where I've grown the most the last year in
yeah.
particular is like, okay, let's wear this lens of how does this make sense in nature that this person would have to live in this experience that is very confusing
Mm,
for them and very, like uh very what's the word? But it helps them to stay alive and
mm,
to try and solve that problem somehow, whether they do or not.
yeah.
It's okay. It's actually helped me to, kind of like lean back a little, right?
Mm,
And fully choose my biological womanhood. And at the same time, give everybody, the spaciousness and the right to explore their own path to
mm,
truth. Right. And yeah, because one of the things that was really getting me in the beginning was why is even like the trad femininity being politicized? Like it
mm,
was so like it's such a device. Like we can see it. Like it's all used to divide and conquer.
yeah.
And I am like, you know what? That's just not how I want to live, not how I want my children to learn how
Mm,
to live. So let's find a better way.
absolutely.
Nuanced exploration, individual femininity, like you beautifully said.
Mm,
And yeah, let's see how that works for us. And so far it's working.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the nuanced is the key here because I think it's not that I have, and this is what I say to people, this is not that I have an issue with the people who believe in feminism, because I know where they're coming from,
I
because
do
I was
too.
that.
Yeah.
I don't
Mm.
actually have an issue with trad wife aesthetic people either, because
Yeah.
there is something in that that is beautiful, that is to aspire to. What I have an issue with
Yes.
is where people are so rigid in telling me that this is the way that I must be in order to be
Yes.
correct, in order
Yeah.
to be living my truth. And I think that is not real. That is an
No.
idea that is like, great, you've got some ideas, bring it to the table. I'm happy for that. But do not
Mm.
come and tell me that this is reality, because
Yeah,
it
it's
is not.
exactly. It's like telling a white tiger that is an anomaly in nature that it's not a tiger, and it totally is. You
Yes.
know, you know what I mean? And it's like telling a woman who's not in a sundress, not feminine in
Yeah.
like whatever the flavor of the description of femininity is trending,
Mm,
that she is not a woman. Of course she's a woman, she's a biological female,
yeah.
right? Is she individuated by her character traits, by her traumas, by the experiences that have happened to her that have required her to form adaptations in her behavior?
That's it.
Yes, but people don't see that. It's always,
Mm,
oh, raging blue-haired feminist
yeah.
cat lady. And I'm like, wait a minute, why does that make
Why?
sense for her? And that's
Exactly.
actually something that I own, that I used to judge. I was there
Yeah.
too. Like, oh, like, but the thing is, now that I have this lens of like biological adaptations, I'm
Mm,
like, now everything has sense to it. Because
yes.
if nature just does what makes sense, then even people who are choosing unbiological, these all these mutilations that we're seeing being done to
Mm,
young children, all of these mind control programs telling people that they're this gender or
mm,
whatever, those are also adaptations, right?
mm,
They are trying to survive something traumatic,
mm,
shocking that happened to them. And their behavior,
mm.
is giving them the ability to stay alive
Yeah.
until they can find resolution and a path to the truth.
Well, you look
So,
at the fear that's
yeah.
on that side of the aisle.
Mm,
They're living in a fearful world where everything
yes.
is bad. The world is going to end imminently.
Mm,
People are coming to get them all the time, and that they're
yeah.
being attacked, they're being victimized. It is a very scary place. So they
Yeah.
must prepare
They
themselves. They
have
have
to.
to go to battle, so that these changes are happening because of the psychological programming that is happening for them. But it's,
Yeah.
even in the most basic level, I was told for a lot of my life that I was in my masculine. And when
Mm,
I
yeah. Let's
stopped
get to that.
trying to fight against that,
Mhm.
that was when I actually opened everything up, because I suddenly had this realization that there is no such thing as being in your masculine. These people, I can never not be a woman. I can never not be feminine. There may
Mhm.
be blocks in front of that I've stopped myself accessing certain parts of my femininity, but
Yeah.
that part of my femininity has become more dominant. The warrior woman archetype, she's in control right now, and
Yeah.
so that doesn't make me less feminine. It just makes me stuck in one aspect,
Yeah.
not accessing all the different aspects of femininity that I need to respond to at any moment. But that does not
Yeah.
make me male. That does not make
No.
me masculine at all.
No.
And it's the
Yeah.
same with even, these women who are transitioning, or these women who are confused about even, fluidity or non-binary or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
you can never not be. That is an
Mm-mm.
aspect of the feminine.
It
And it
is.
and it may be an unhealthy aspect. It may be
Mm-hmm.
you stuck in just that, singular expression. Both of those things, an unhealthy expression or stuck in an expression, are both not
Yeah.
great in terms of like how we are meant to express, but they're still
Mm-hmm.
feminine.
Yeah.
And when we
Absolutely.
deny that those things that we find shameful are a part of us, then we're doing the exact same thing. Because we're
We
going,
are.
well, we could never do that. I would never be like that. But there's a part of
Yeah.
us that has unhealthiness in us. There's a part of us that gets locked into being a certain way because it's easier or it's more accepted or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, having that understanding, I so agree with the adaptations. I'm always so curious as to what has happened in this person's life that
right.
has
That they
made them feel
have.
like that's the best choice for me right now?
Exactly. That's the question we have to ask every
Yeah.
individual of our relationship to how we're responding to the individual.
Yeah.
We have to ask ourselves that question because nobody has to change for us to be more comfortable.
Yeah.
Really. No one does. We just have to like be curious about like, oh, well, why could this person be expressing in this
Yeah.
way? And you just to dial back into what you said about single moms being in their masculine, or like women who are archetypally this independent boss babe
Mm,
women, right? So let's break it down to biology. Okay,
mm,
we have our brains. You're born a female with a female brain. You cannot be a biological male,
yeah.
and vice versa. And in our brains, we have this beautiful prefrontal cortex, right, with our temporal lobes, right? And so when a let's take the example of a female lion, right?
Hmm.
When this female lion gets pregnant, she's pregnant with all the other female lions in the tribe because that's how it works in nature in a
Yeah.
harem, right? They're all impregnated at the same time. And then they have their babies. And when they have their babies, they actually have their babies outside of the tribe, right? They
Mm,
give birth outside of the nest. And eventually they bring the babies back into the nest, aka the pride.
mm,
During that time, that mama lion has to be in her masculine.
yeah.
But that refers to just the temporal lobe, where we have, and this is more like GNM language, we have a male territorial area and a female territorial area. It controls testosterone and estrogen. When you have babies to protect, right? What's the logical thing that you will do? You will be more alert. You will be willing to risk your life for the babies. You
Mm,
see this, even if you see, I was watching a video, you see a mama dog and her puppies, and daddy dog knows not to go near mama
yeah.
while she's nursing. This is dog,
Yeah.
and why is that? Why does that make sense in nature? Why, just like, why does it make sense for a mom who has to work for her
Mm,
children because no one's around to be like the protector provider, or maybe she's with a husband that is not yet
mm,
in his king
mm,
energy, or whatever. It's nature. It's an
mm,
adaptation. She's
mm,
not being masculine. She
mm.
is just being territorial over
Yeah.
the child.
Yeah.
And that's rightful because can you imagine if this female lion who gives birth on her own in the wilderness was like waiting around for the man?
Yeah.
Sorry, he's not coming around. He's like,
Yeah.
I just got to do what keeps my babies alive so that when they're 3 months old, they can go back to the nest.
Yeah.
They can be smelled by all
Yeah.
the other females and accepted and integrated into the big
Totally.
territory. And so, like, we forget that as human beings, we are also human animal, mammal,
Yes.
right? We have these very ancient mechanisms,
Mm.
and we start degrading them or calling them, oh, she's in her masculine, when really, are you actually placing a label or a dogma against something that's in nature?
Something
Like
that's
who,
just human. It's
yeah,
not a
who,
masculine
right? It's
quality to be
not.
protective.
It's
It's just that
not.
they sit more in that more often. We
Yeah,
still have that.
which makes sense.
All humans are protective,
Yeah.
all humans are emotional, all humans are strong. We're just in different ways
Yes,
and we live in
exactly.
that space in different amounts. That's what
Yeah.
we're talking about. But we don't ever
Yeah.
say, well, a woman can never be strong or a woman can never be protective. A woman can't provide. Like a woman can provide so much in different
She
ways
can.
than men do. And
Yeah.
sometimes in the same way that men do. But it's
Yeah.
about the different amounts and the different times and
And
how
her
long.
different, how her biology responds to it too,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And a woman who is
Yeah.
constantly providing her biology is going to be reacting to that in a
Oh,
different
yeah.
way to a woman who is more constantly receiving. So it's
Mm.
this is the kind of nuanced conversation that we don't really get into. Like to say that, a woman who is protective, and I've heard this, and this infuriates me, to say that a woman who is protecting her children or is more focused on her
Mm.
children
Mm.
is not feminine is
Oh,
mind blowing to me. I'm like, this is mother is the ultimate expression of the feminine archetype. In that scenario right now, you could not be more woman
yeah.
than you are.
Yeah.
Especially hormonally, biologically, like in reality, what is happening, not my idea
Mm-hmm.
of it. If I'm looking at pure biological, that is the most woman you're going to be. And when you are a
Mm-hmm.
mother, and to say that that is not feminine
Yeah.
is
They're coming
wild.
from, yeah, I can understand where they're coming from. It's also, I think they're saying that in relation to when she is not able to step out of that so that she can have this relationship with a man, which,
Yes.
is also true. Like, it's
This is a
also true that
nuance.
but it's a nuance. It's not a right or wrong.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, I drop the children and just work on my marriage. You're working
Yes.
on your marriage so that you can provide a healthy template for the children,
Yes.
And even if you're a single mom, I have so many, I talk about single moms a lot because I have so many clients who are single moms, who are
Yes.
dating, who are in courtship, who are getting married again. Like, I always remind these women because they've been so judged
Mm,
by a lot of traditional women,
mm,
traditional women, women who've been in marriages for a long time. And I'm like, you know what, girl? If you truly believe that you are this adaptable being, that you see the abundance available to you in
mm.
life itself, then understand that yes, you have your biology and you are more than your biology.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to, biology should not become another religion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
so for a lot of these women who are like, oh, am I teaching my children to be masculine because I have three children and I have a job, but they don't have a dad because, he was abusive and I had to divorce him. Like, no, you are templating yourself exactly as your children need to learn. And then when, you want a man to come along and fall in love with you and build a family with him, your children are also looking at
Yeah.
how you and that man
Yes.
are operating in relationship. Like,
Yeah.
you template your children for sacred union. So I feel I know what those women are talking about when they say,
Hmm.
oh, like these things about
Yeah.
us being too hands-on parent with your children, which is
Mm.
for me is ridiculous because I'm like, maybe we're just from different generations, but I am very hands-on with my
Yeah.
children. I can't imagine not
Yeah.
homeschooling them, you know what I mean? But like, and again, nothing wrong with putting them in school, but it's
Yeah.
like, for me, for my personality, for my templating in our family, this is what works. So
Yes.
sometimes it's all like at the end of the day, I just take a huge exhale and I'm like, I'm so glad that I have fully chosen my life, right?
Yeah.
And other women get to choose their life and they don't have to
Absolutely.
share their projections on me. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
to take their
Don't have to take
projections.
it on. Not at all. Yeah, I totally agree because, when we talk about like being animals and stuff, I think about often how it would have been when we were more tribal because
Yeah.
we would be in villages where there would be several
Yes,
other women helping you out. You would not be doing this alone. Women raising children alone is a fairly new phenomena that we are
it
not actually,
is.
it's an experiment that we are failing right now. It is not
Yeah, the
as
whole
successful.
obsession with the nuclear family.
Yeah.
I'm like, I get where that could be, like, useful, but we have to understand that nuclear family is also meant to be part of an ecosystem of
Yeah.
a village,
Yes.
right? And, I think our obsession with
Individualization. Yeah.
super individuating, like, and then we blame the women for not being able to take care of the home and the cooking and the cleaning and the
Yeah.
birthing and like so it's just an invitation. It's like a knock on the mental door of our
Mm.
minds by nature to say, hey, this something's got to give, like, you have to, like, look at what is going on here
Yeah.
that is anti biology, that is
Yeah.
anti child
Anti-human.
in many ways, and anti human. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
totally. And even, like half the time the men wouldn't even be there in the village.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
women had to
Mhm.
have some kind of protection skills. They had to
Together.
be, yeah. And it
You have
was
to be together.
if the men couldn't trust you to take care of their children, then that would be an issue in itself. They don't need another child to take care of. So to say that you want like this, the description of like this perfect little wife who is incredibly submissive and asks no questions and doesn't have any skills. I've heard it said that women shouldn't have education because that will just make them more curious and getting into other things that
Goodness.
they shouldn't get into. So there's all these tropes out there. And I just think I
Mm.
always thinking back to, would that actually work in reality? It's like, I understand where your idea is coming from. I understand where you're trying to get to. And I understand that there's a fear or a lack mentality there that you're saying that programming for. But if I come back to reality, that's not going to work. You,
Right.
you
It
need to
isn't.
you need to choose
Mhm.
a woman who will actually be able to take care of her babies and who
Yeah.
knows how to do that, and who, if she can't, is well resourced enough with her community because she develops good
Yes.
relationships,
Yes,
to have other
exactly.
people take care of them.
Yeah. And if you look at all of our indigenous history, like I'm talking about, go back to the bare bones of
Yeah.
recorded humanity, or go to your tribal stories in your lineage. We all grew up in the way that you described.
Yeah.
Men would be away most of the time defending,
Hunting.
hunting, killing off barbarians.
Mm,
So, and risking, basically, you never knew if your husband would come home,
yeah.
right? And we don't live in that world right now, but
Mm.
we still have the same instincts and
Yes.
drivers, right,
Yes.
inside of our bodies. And that's why we say things like, I want a man who's a beast, but who can hug his
Yeah.
children,
Yes.
right? I want a man who's a dom in bed, but who, like babies me, and I'm his
Yes.
little princess. Like, so where's that from? Like, so there's
Yeah.
parts of us that are still in our animalistic what I like
Yeah.
to use the word primal,
Yeah.
like knowing, and
Mm,
that's good. And we need textures and layers of that because, like you said, no man actually wants a doting, silent, submissive who just brings him peace. That's
yes.
another thing. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like flat, not juicy, just doing her chores and
Mm,
like, being sort of like a Cinderella,
yeah.
in the worst sense of the word,
Just
because I
hire
happen
a
to love,
maid.
right? So I'm like, what we need more, like more textures and layers of the feminine, because
Mm,
ask any husband, okay, or a
mm,
man who is it like in love with a woman. It's not because she is just silent and
yes.
dutiful and submissive. She's devoted,
Mm,
right? She can be devoted, she can be loving, she can be caring, but at the same time, you are so in like, and this is the only thing men need from women, is to be seen as a man,
mm,
right? So when she can bring that devotion but not be stifled in her expression,
mm,
that is, a relationship where the masculine and feminine energy, ooh,
mm.
right, is circulated and
Yeah.
creates life,
Yeah.
not this hierarchical top down, I'm the male authority and you're the
Mm,
silent submissive
mm,
situation that we see. I mean, it's disturbing. We see it happen, being preached in certain circles and
yeah.
certain tropes, right?
Yeah.
And the truth is, a woman is a man and a woman is so much more interesting than that.
Yeah. And, any man who has a good relationship with his wife will tell you that the things that she brings him is through her being able to connect and to be to herself and her own
Yes.
intuition. She's like a guide for him. She's like the neck that turns the head, or the heart that lights up the mind.
Or the oracle that speaks.
Yes, the oracle.
Yeah.
And she is a multiplier in so many ways. So if
Yes.
you're bringing her nothing because you think that she is like a nothing, that she is submissive, then she's going to give
Right.
you back nothing. But if you
Yeah.
bring your wife everything, she's going to give it back to you more. Actually, what you gain from having her in your life is more than you could possibly understand. That whole
So
what do you
true.
bring to the table conversation
Oh,
is so tired because it just tells me that you don't understand women. That's
yeah.
what you are saying to me when you say that. You say you do not understand. You do not understand women. You do not know how to cherish them. You do not know what their powers are. And because if you did, you would value just their very
Mm,
existence, and you would be so grateful that they would be giving their being to you because it multiplies everything about you as a man. It is such a
yeah.
reflection of who you are. The woman is like this beautiful mirror that shows you what kind of man you are in her face, in her
Yeah.
aura, the way that she's being. When men used to show off their wives at dinner parties and stuff like that, it was
Right.
for a
Yeah.
reason. It was like, this
Yeah.
is the kind of man that I am. I can prove it. Look at my wife. Look how
Look at
happy she
how
is.
relaxed she is, how
Yes.
beautiful she is.
Yes.
And I think, well, we all know that we all know the movements and collective psyche
Mm,
that made that wrong, of
yes.
course, right? Because it's kind of, oh, it's like hearkening back to a time of, we can say, King Xerxes trying
Mm.
to, like display Vashti, talking about biblical
Yes.
times. And like, but we are not in those times anymore.
Mm.
Like we are not in arcane,
Mm.
like expressions of humanity. We have evolved. And I think that, in the spirit of that, even these talks on masculinity and femininity need to evolve, but to
Yeah.
evolve not to just new ideas and expressions, but on touching the ontological,
Mm.
touching the fundamental biological truths that we all belong to, right?
Mm.
Because it's like saying, who's got the next great idea? The
Mm.
thing is, any next great idea of, like a new polarity technique or a new like way to be feminine, that's all going to fall flat if we don't get the
Yeah.
fundamentals, the things that don't change, the laws in nature that we belong to, if
Yeah.
we don't have respect for those,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And that's,
Mm.
like that was something that I really respected about Ryan. What drew me to Ryan King was his post about his wife.
Mm.
And it,
Who's also Lauren.
Lauren is incredible. Like I
Yeah.
love Lauren, and what that was the thing. I was like, this guy's posting great stuff. That's amazing. But the way that he spoke about his wife, and
Yeah.
I remember exactly the post. Their washing machine was broken, and he
Yeah.
was saying, "This is such BS. How people are saying that women can't do anything, and if my wife was not a capable woman that she is right now, she wouldn't be at home." Under our
Mm.
washing machine, fixing the part that needed to be fixed. She would be sitting there waiting for me. But I actually am at work providing so she can be at home right now, and I would
Mm-hmm.
have to sort all that out. That would be another like problem in my day or whatever. But she's so incredible. He goes, I didn't ask her to do that. Of course I would sort that out. But she's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, I've got it. We're a team, we're capable. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, thank you. A man who is clearly cherishing his wife, wants to do
Yeah.
everything for her, so much so that she's like, no, don't worry. That you
Yeah.
give, you both are giving so like freely, without resentment, without
Yeah.
thought of like this whole tit for tat tally up, like, are we getting the right amount? Like, I'm giving this and you're giving that. And it is so unproductive.
Exhausting.
It's
Yeah.
exhausting,
It's a,
but it goes nowhere.
and to that point, I know like because I saw this for a while, I was like, okay, that's interesting because there was a trend on like social media of,
Yeah.
spoiled wives, which I think any husband would love to spoil his wife, right?
Yes.
But like there are layers and flavors of how you spoil your wife
Yeah.
because like my mother compared to my father is the handy woman
Yeah.
of the family. My dad couldn't tell like a wrench from a pair of pliers,
Yeah.
but he's really great as being a stockbroker. He's
Yeah.
really great in like Wall Street,
Yeah.
finance, that sort of thing. And he can hire any help he wants to. But my
That's it.
mom is a trained beginner carpenter, because she used
Wow.
to own an interior design business.
Cool.
She used to command like men, she's
Yeah.
an interior designer. So she's also a handy woman. And so for me, it's really funny when and I see this mostly like in the westernized tropes of femininity,
Yeah.
the courtly femininity,
Mm.
like inspired by the Renaissance femininity. I mean, like, yes, but there were also peasants in the Renaissance. There were also working class in the Renaissance.
Yeah.
So I'm
Not
like, I
everyone's a
remember,
cute queen.
right? My mom is like Lauren, she's fully provided for, never
Yeah.
had to lift a finger to make any money. But if there was a light bulb that had to be
She
changed,
could do it.
she could do it without like waiting for my dad.
Yeah.
And I sometimes I like, and it's totally fine if you're a woman who prefers not to do that
Yeah.
and you want your flavor of femininity to be soft girly, spoiled girly. That's
Yeah.
totally fine with me. But like it's when we look at these displays of expression and we have that tinge of, oh, I'm doing something wrong. Or I'm
Mm.
doing something that's putting me in my masculine because I'm
Yeah.
changing a light bulb, or I'm changing, I'm fixing the washing machine, or whatever,
Mm.
right? And that's where I can tell that this woman is not in approval of her womanhood
Mm,
because, like, a woman is a mother, a warrior when she has to be,
mm,
a protector, a mama bear
mm,
with rage and the anger, when she has to be. At the same time, she is also like alluring,
mm,
magnetic. When the
mm.
man that like is around, she can radiate without hooking or being manipulative or seductive of him, right? Like that's actually our true essence. And so when
Mm.
we usually latch onto the thing that we want but don't have,
Yeah.
right? So I always remind women, I'm like, so, okay, are you resenting your husband
Mm,
for not coming home and taking care of the washing machine?
mm,
If you are, then your expression of femininity may be more dogmatic
mm,
than enigmatic,
mm.
right? Which is right, you enigmatic means that you're just in approval of everything you get to do and that you can choose not to do,
Yeah.
right? Like I prefer to wait for him to fix the
Mm,
the washing machine, which means I'm prepared for 5 days of
yeah.
hand washing,
Yeah.
right? So like we have to, as women, and this is my invitation for all the women, we have to appreciate, like I think we have to be more self-aware
Mm,
when we look at women, because we're always on social media these days, women, I mean, let's admit it, right? And we are looking at what is feeding our projections,
mm,
what is problematic versus how can I be enigmatic around this, self-aware,
mm.
looking at my shadows, looking at what's triggering me, looking and actually being able to speak what I want versus, just having resentment at what I don't have and what I've not made clear to my husband. I'm always reminded of, these very like some of these couples don't even have to learn polarity. They just live
I
it because
just
they're
do
just
it.
living their lives,
Yeah.
they're in approval of it. Like my
Yeah.
mom was the first one who taught me, Martine, when
Mm,
your husband comes home, have a nice warm meal prepared for him, whether he gets home late. And I'm like, I've just lived that as a behavior. Like
mm,
that was just like she didn't have to teach it to me, to explain it to me. It was just I saw it modeled by
mm,
her, that that's how she saw my dad as a man. Worked hard all day, comes home at 8, because we'd have had dinner by 6 as
mm,
children. And sometimes he comes home at 8 and there's a portion of dinner for him,
mm,
like properly set at a table. That
mm.
was just normal. Not
Yeah.
not any of this,
Same.
oh, like you're not making an effort, you're not home by 6 p.m. every night, you
Yeah.
know, so it was, my parents just modeled it naturally. No
Yeah.
arguments, none, no, none, and they're the best of friends.
Yeah.
They love hanging out with each other. And my
Yeah. My
mom can
parents too.
express herself in any, she's not this silent,
Yeah.
submissive type, although you can see her devotion to him
Mm,
in that ritual
yeah.
of like, have a plate of food, always ready for your husband
Yes.
when he comes home late from work. And I'm like, that's beautiful. I
Yeah.
wish we all embodied that more naturally, right? And even if we don't, we get to choose, our expression of
Mm,
devotion, of respect, especially for those of us in relationships, right? I think what we really want to do, like from the pureness of our hearts, we really want things to be good,
yeah.
better, for some people. But let's not get attached to a way another couple is navigating it and then
Yes.
suffering through the fact that we don't have it exactly that way,
Yeah.
right?
That's such a great question to always be like, but why am I wanting it this way? Why?
Yeah.
Like, it's fine if you don't want to fix the washer, but why don't you want to fix the washer? Is there a
Mm.
part of you that believes that you would be taking away from your femininity by fixing the washer?
Yeah. Oh, a lot of women, yeah. Oh, Lauren, a lot of women fall into that. I'm
Totally.
I'm going into my masculine energy. I'm like, you're already in your masculine energy, managing the household, managing your 3 kids and their schedules. Like that is what the doing yang. That's why I prefer to use yin and
Yeah, and
yang.
yang, absolutely.
Because
Outward energy versus inward energy. Yin and
right?
yang is not masculine and feminine. Let's get
It's
that straight.
not,
It's inward and
guys.
outward energy.
It is not. I am part Chinese. I will
Yeah.
tell you, it is not how we have
Yes.
defined it. It's like, so yeah, so let's see what is causing us unnecessary suffering,
Yeah.
right? Because I think a lot of us just want the best for ourselves, the
Yeah.
best for our children, the best for our husbands and partners. But we still have this, again, going back to the beginning,
Mm.
this need to get it right because
Yeah.
we feel like we won't belong or we'll be out of place or we will be labeled, just whatever label of
Shunned.
suffering or shunned, right?
Mm.
So let's really, my desire, Lauren, is really for women to have such an embodied sense of their own wisdom, like their
Mm.
gnosis,
Mm.
feminine gnosis as women. And an expression that I like to use in my spaces, that feminine spine.
Mm.
Like you are rooted and anchored in your knowing,
Yeah.
in your relationship to truth, in your relationship with your body, that even if 100 Instagrams come with their own take on it,
Yes.
you are not triggered or you don't track in
Mm.
a projection or a story or a narrative that doesn't even belong to you.
Mm.
And you can just, like I said, I prefer to live a life that is not conflicted in my psyche, right?
Mm.
I don't have time for that. I have children to raise. I have
Yeah.
I have a life to live,
Yeah.
right? So I feel that when we navigate the space, and I think that that's why I like talking to you, because we get each other in that. Did you see that? Did you see the binary there? Did you see the
Yeah.
brittle opinion there? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, girl, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just knowing that your femininity is not so fragile that stepping
Mm,
outside of your dogma would destroy it. Like believe
right.
more in yourself, believe more in the feminine that exists within you naturally. And it's not
Yeah.
like you don't have to find her. Like, how do I get more into my feminine? How do I get back to my feminine? She didn't go anywhere.
Didn't go anywhere.
You're
Yeah.
still, that is you. Let's
Mm.
just open up to her and all the aspects of her and not think that she's so fragile that if you have a thought that's over here or you have to do something that's over there, that suddenly she's collapsed and unable to be accessed. Like, believe
Right.
more in the beingness of who you are. Like, I love that idea
Mm.
of that feminine spine that you were just saying. Like, that really
Yeah.
feels like the somatic root of like
It is. It's exactly what it
anchoring.
is. Yeah. Because a
Yeah.
lot of us are in that wound, kind of like, I'm a wounded little bird,
Yeah.
feminine. I'm a wounded little mermaid, feminine, like it's
Collapsed,
exhausting or collapse, right? It's
collapsed
exhausting.
feminine.
And I'm like, you know what? The truth is you are not. You're just
Mm,
living inside a story that you keep telling yourself. And then you live these self-fulfilling prophecies because you make another woman's life more important than your own. Right.
yeah.
And that's the last thing we like to admit. It's like, yeah, but well, where does that come from? So get curious. Where does that
Mm,
come from? Where am I not making myself the most important woman in my life? And
yeah.
I think, like I grew up in the Christian world. So saying things like that was controversial. Like you
Mm,
deny yourself. And when I believe, and again, hot take on this, I
love
believe
it.
that when Jesus said, deny yourself, he was talking about the parts of you that do not anchor you in the image of God that you are made in,
The
right? Because God,
ego self.
yes, right. Because the ego's useful for protecting you,
Yeah.
for like making sure that you don't run into a brick wall, right?
Yes.
That's also part of it, right? But at the same time, when we get like we almost worship our wounds,
Yeah.
we almost worship our judgments of self. That's what he said. You deny
Mm,
that because that is not how you are made in the image of God.
yeah.
And I mean, to last point here, I think that that was Eve's mistake in the Garden of Eden story. It's
Mm,
like doubting that God was in her, that she
mm,
was made in not God, she's not God, but she's living, breathing image of God. And I think if all of us remembered that, like as women, as men too, but we're women here. Our topic is womanhood. But if we woke up every day and really breathe that in, that I am made in the image of God and likeness of God, then my prayers would be different. The way that I would look at this woman's social media or follow this woman's life would be so different because it wouldn't be from this woundedness and this
mm,
spineless, like way of being. It
mm,
would be from, wow, like do I really live in a world with so much variety?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Every woman is a different expression of womanhood. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I get to spend another day in the mystery of this, like
Yeah.
world that we live in,
And
right?
if
Like
we're all a
that's,
different expression of God, then how multifaceted is this God? And like, that's so
yeah,
incredible. That means I have every option open to me and none of it is wrong.
yeah, yeah. So I hope that we all arrive there at that place and understanding that like when we arrive at that place of, I call it like approval. It's
Mm,
an approval because when you approve something, you look at it and you look at it from all sides and um you kind of like say yes, like
mm,
this is my full body yes to this expression, to this
mm,
experience, to this person that I am. And when you have that much awareness, right, then when things like opinions, other people's expressions, other people's beliefs um, are in front of you, you don't go into this like, kind of like
yeah.
this contracted, it can't be that way
Mm,
manner of living, right? You're more like, wow, like I'm so glad that I'm in a full body yes to my expression of womanhood.
mm,
And, like um that is, for me, that is the most fruitful and fertile way of living, right?
mm.
Versus let's see who's got it more right or who's got
Yeah,
it more correct, right?
absolutely.
And that's why I like your name, the refined woman,
Yeah.
because that is a refined woman.
Yeah. And
That is what she is.
the refinement process just doesn't end. Like I had when I first changed it, there was some people who were assuming some arrogance there. And I was like, no,
Oh,
there is no end point to refinement. You are
no.
constantly refining because I
Refining.
am responding now. I am no
Yeah,
longer like living in like backtracking, trying to fix things. I am
right.
in the moment and I'm responding and refining as I go, as I move through life. And I
Yeah,
encounter different aspects of myself because I'm now open to that part of myself in that experience, in that way. And
totally.
what is the healthiest expression of that? And that's really what I grew into. I moved away from something else and who I didn't really know who she was. And
Mm.
I had to change this whole persona that I had beforehand, which was that Insta chick was still a
Oh,
part of
right.
me.
Oh my God. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was your name before.
that
Yeah.
Insta chick. Yeah, and I was like, that's wonderful. She was figuring it out, but that has collapsed now,
Mm.
and it's not collapsed in a way that she's weak. It's collapsed in a way that she's folded into me to be
Oh,
expressed
yeah.
in a different way, and I've
I love that.
integrated her now, and I am now stepping into a more mature version of
Mm.
myself. There was an initiation process and a maturation that occurred, and
Yeah.
I had to. There was actually no other way that I could be because I was going to shut down my Instagram, but I had no other choice. I had to
Yeah.
embody that or
Yeah.
die, basically, in the metaphorical sense. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
chose yes as well. I was like, yes.
Yes. I think I remember that, but I love what you said. She folded into you
Yeah.
because like in the beginning when I was talking about the pendulum swing
Yeah.
of women, what we tend to do is reject,
Yeah.
self-rejection. And that's really painful, because it's
Mm.
like rejecting a part of your body. So, what I find was so beautiful about how you express that is that, we are all these parts of
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
journey, all of our
Yeah.
decisions. Like, and this is why, there are, in the language of adaptation that I use, there are no good and bad decisions
Yeah.
because you're here today.
Yeah.
So what had to happen,
Yeah.
even if our ego would prefer it not to,
Mm.
right? It had to happen to lead you here where you could
Mm.
fold into where that instant chick could fold into a refined woman
Mm.
and Lauren today, whether she's 2.0, 3.0, whatever,
Yeah.
right? She is what she is the perfect, like the quintessence
Mm.
of nature, of evolution, of maturation. And I
Mm.
think that when we live in and breathe that state of being, that's where, like you were saying earlier, we are in that abundance,
Yeah.
that flow of abundance versus, oh, like here's reparation for another mistake that I made in life.
Yeah.
Here's penance for another, like wrong direction that I went because this person or that organization or this religion said so,
Mm,
right? It's more like, yeah, okay. I accept everything that happened, every
mm,
era, every thing that also was not, like that was uncomfortable, that caused me
mm,
suffering, even pain and even devastation.
yeah.
But it's still a part of what folds into me that is
Mm.
here now, right? So, oh, so beautiful. Yeah.
I know you have to go. I know you
Yeah.
have family dinner, but I
Yeah, we
wanted to
do.
say thank you so much. What an
Thank you.
incredible conversation. I I feel like we could keep talking for hours,
I
but
feel
I
like we'll
won't.
have a part two. Yeah.
I would love for you to come back. So I love that you said that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving so generously of your time, and thank you so much for all that you do on your in your work. I have attended many of your Zoom calls, which were just generously given. Because
And
you
there's more coming up. Yeah. Mm-mm.
please. So can
For
you tell
mothers.
us how,
Yeah.
if people want to contact you and want to work with you
Sure.
and want to find you, tell us all the details, please.
Right, right. Well, I post everything on my Instagram, so that's at feminine womanhood. And if they want to know like the different offerings that I have, I always have a link in my bio of what's active. So that's my main website, right? My social media. And yeah, I have different options. There's the Edenic Woman for a community that really riffs on biological womanhood. And then I have different containers for married women and women who are courting.
Mm.
So yeah, all of it is in my Instagram bio if you're interested.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Martine. I really, really appreciate it and
Thank
look
you,
forward to
Lauren.
chatting with you next time.
Absolutely. Take care.